Okay, hey guys, this is going to be part 2 of the buttons and booleans example. We already dealt with the booleans in the last lesson. So if we just press play here, we know we've got this going, and if we press G, this keeps increasing. Now, next part of this is to get it to stop when we click there. Okay, so let's look into this. So we're going to be using this Boolean variable that we created. Okay, we're going to actually be setting it to false when we click on that particular button. Now, these buttons aren't super easy. It's not like an object itself. We're basically going to tell the computer if we click in a certain area of our project, okay, if we click only in a certain area of our project, will the actual circle stop growing. So we want to be able to click right inside this click here to stop box and have it stop growing. But if we click outside of the stop box in the blue area, it doesn't stop growing. So I've already kind of laid this out for you, the void mouse clicked, and it says exactly what we want to do is we need to create a condition that checks all of these things together. So let's start off here. We're going to say if, okay, we click greater than 100 on the x-axis. Now, why is that? Well, if I can show you this little screenshot I took of the project, okay, from the leftmost edge of the screen to the right edge of the triangle, okay, that's 0 to 100. And what we want to say is anything greater than 100, it has to be, we want to say, okay, if we've clicked anything greater than 100, then engage whatever we have in this if statement. Okay, so make this happen. And we already decided that this was going to be setting the growing variable to true, or setting it to false. So let's say if, okay, we've got the if already, is growing equals false. Okay, so no, that's not exactly what we want yet. We have to actually say, okay, greater than x on the x-axis, or greater than 100 on the x-axis. So let's talk about how we're going to do this. Think back to one of the first lessons we had in processing. We learned about that variable called mouse x, that keyword that we could use that would track the x location in the mouse. So we're going to use that right now. We're going to say mouse x is greater than 100. Okay. Now, let's just try this. If mouse x is greater than 100, okay, we'll add our brackets that we need here. Okay, set is going to false. So let me actually try playing that. Let's check on this side. Oh, sorry, we pressed G first. Then we're going to check. No, not going to stop it growing on this side before 100. But if I run this again, press G, and I click over here, it's going to set is growing to false. So anything on this side of our left part of the rectangle. Okay, so if I press G again, click over here, not working, click over here, we stop it from growing. Now, okay, so great. I can click this entire area and want it to stop, but we basically have to box the mouse into this rectangle and figure out what the limits are of this rectangle so that the circle only stops growing when we click inside the limits of this rectangle. Okay, so let's look into this. How can we check if all these things are true? Not only if mouse x is greater than 100, but as I have here, check if mouse x is less than 200. I can check both of those things using and. So two ampersands means if this is true and if this is true. Okay, so if you're a little confused as to what's happening here, we've got a little bit more of an example actually over here, and it talks about and kind of where we're going with this. Okay, so let's just double check on here. Let's see if we've restricted it at least to the center portion of the screen. Make it grow. Click here to stop. No. Click here to stop. No. And middle. it actually stops. Cool. So that's exactly what we want. Now we want to limit it to just below this particular line right here. Okay, so in order to limit, we're going to add another 2 ampersands, and we're going to say if mouse y is greater than 250. Why 250? Well, let's look at that picture I created. So this right here, this top line of the rectangle, that is drawn at 250 on the y-axis. Now, you can check that out if you look at rect. Okay, how do we know it's at 250? Well, rect mode is set to center. Our center point on the y-axis is going to be 275, and our rectangle is a height of 50. So that means that half of 50, okay, this half of 50 will be at 275, which would be 25. Okay, subtract 25 from 275 and you get 250. Okay, and you can see right here that that's going to be 250. So let's add that in here. And then of course, our last condition is pretty easy to figure out, less than 300 on the y-axis. The screen is 300 by 300. So of course it has to be less than 300 on the y-axis. So mouse y is less than 300. Let's try it out. Okay, press G, click anywhere around here, and we click the rectangle and it actually stops. Press G again, click outside the rectangle. Oop, too far outside the rectangle. Let's try resetting that. G, stop, G, stop, G, stop. And there you have it. So you've got an example of Booleans and how those work. Okay, it's simply a variable that you can set to true or false. Note that the variable isn't changing, that it doesn't automatically change for us. We actually have to set it to is growing is equal to true or is growing is equal to false in certain conditions. And that's up to us. It's not going to set itself, okay, just because it's called is growing. Okay, this is a variable that we've named and created, and we can set it to whatever we want based on what we want to have happen. Okay, and we also focused on using mouse clicked. So this, of course, happens anytime you click the mouse, as we know, but we've now started to restrict where we can actually click and when we want this to be, this method we want to have it engaged. Okay, so based on where we clicked on the screen, okay, we can, of course, set a variable using those conditions, having 4 different conditions about where our mouse is on the screen and actually clicking. All right, that concludes the buttons and Booleans tutorial.